She was a woman wrapped in layers of shame, draped in the label society had forced on her, prostitute. Her name? Rahab, a name uttered behind closed doors and whispered with disdain in the dark corners of Jericho. Men visited her by night, but in the daylight they turned away in silence, pretending they didn't know her. She walked among her people, yet lived as an outcast, her home tucked into the thick walls of a powerful city that boasted strength, wealth, and spiritual blindness. Jericho was a fortress, proud and pagan, defiant in its worship of idols, convinced that its walls could shield it from any threat, even from the God of Israel. And yet within those impenetrable walls, in a house marked by sin, lived a woman chosen by heaven. Not a warrior, not a priestess, not a noble, but a woman society would discard. A Canaanite, the enemy of God's people. And not just any woman, a harlot. Still, it was this same woman who would one day find her name etched in the sacred lineage of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Yes, you heard that right. This is no ordinary story. This is Divine Verses Unmasked, where we peel back the curtain and expose the astonishing grace and purpose of God through the lives of the most unlikely individuals. If you believe that no one is too far gone for God to redeem, then this channel is your home. Click that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and join us on this journey through the hidden treasures of Scripture. Now prepare your heart, because the story of Rahab isn't just about walls falling. It's about shame collapsing, faith rising, and salvation breaking through where no one thought it could. Jericho was no ordinary city. It was a fortress built on arrogance and illusion. From a distance, its grandeur was undeniable. The massive walls stood tall and wide, an intimidating marvel of ancient engineering. So thick were these stone barriers that historians say chariots could ride side by side along their tops. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter with precision, their armor gleaming in the sun, eyes ever watchful for threats that never seemed to come. The gates were shut tight. No one came in. No one went out. Jericho was a sealed bubble, a stronghold that people believed was impenetrable, untouchable. But behind those fortified walls, something darker festered. Inside, life was lavish. There was abundance of wealth, gold, silver, spices, and garments dyed in costly hues. Feasts were held with overflowing wine, music, and indulgence. From the outside, Jericho was thriving, but spiritually, it was bankrupt. The people of Jericho did not worship the God of heaven. They bowed instead to the lifeless idols of Canaan, gods shaped from stone, wood, and metal. They danced before images of Baal and Asherah, sacrificing both animals and, at times, even children to appease deities that neither spoke nor saved. Their religious rituals were not acts of love or holiness, but of depravity. Sacred prostitution, violence, and exploitation were woven into their worship. Darkness reigned, cloaked in the guise of tradition, and yet they were not ignorant. Jericho had heard the rumors, stories that sent tremors through the surrounding nations. The God of Israel had split the Red Sea in two and swallowed Pharaoh's army. He had led his people through a desert with pillars of fire and cloud, feeding them with manna from heaven and water from rock. Kingdoms had fallen before the Israelites without a single sword lifted. Even the mighty kings of Og and Sihon had been crushed under the march of this wandering nation. The signs were undeniable. The God of Israel was real, and he was near. But Jericho, instead of falling to its knees in repentance, gripped tighter to its idols. They chose rebellion over reverence, pride over humility, false gods over the living one. And amid this city of sin lived a woman named Rahab, a prostitute, a woman society viewed as less than nothing. She was a tool for men's pleasure, a shadow in the alleyways, a name no one remembered after nightfall. She had no title, no honor, no legacy. Yet in her heart, something was stirring. While the city grew more defiant, Rahab listened. While others mocked the God of Israel, she feared him. She believed the stories were true, that Yahweh was not just a God, he was the God. In the very heart of rebellion, God had found a listener. A seed of faith was growing in the unlikeliest of places, inside the walls of Jericho, within a woman everyone else had written off. In a city trembling under fear of the approaching Israelites, one woman stood apart, not because of her reputation as a prostitute, but because of something far deeper stirring in her soul, a secret faith. While the rest of Jericho mocked or dismissed the God of Israel, Rahab believed. Not because she had seen the Red Sea split open, nor because she had witnessed the miraculous battles the Israelites had won, but because she heard and her heart responded. In a place drowning in pagan worship and lifeless idols, Rahab longed for something real, something true. That longing birthed faith, and that faith set her apart. Hebrews 11:31 tells us, "By faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient." It's a striking verse. It does not hide her past, yet it praises her faith. Rahab was not a prophet, priest, or warrior. She had no great spiritual lineage. She was a Gentile, an outsider, a woman living in sin, but God saw her heart. Rahab's faith was quiet, private, and uncelebrated, yet it was genuine. It gave her the courage to risk her life to hide the Israelite spies. She could have chosen fear. She could have chosen self-preservation. But instead, she chose faith in a God she had never seen. And this faith wasn't just emotional or wishful thinking. It was active. It moved her to action, to risk, to sacrifice. Her faith was about to be tested, and in the fires of uncertainty, it would shine. This secret, daring belief would not only save her life, it would write her into the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. From the shadows of Jericho's walls, a legacy of faith was born in the most unexpected heart. As twilight cloaked the city of Jericho, a tense stillness settled over its fortified streets. Inside her house, Rahab tended to her usual evening tasks, unaware that the night would test her in ways she never imagined. Then came the knock, firm, urgent. She opened the door and found two strangers, foreign men with dust on their feet and caution in their eyes. In an instant, she recognized them for who they were: Israelite spies sent by Joshua to scout out the land God had promised their people. Her breath caught. These were not ordinary visitors. This was treason by proximity. Rahab's mind raced. She lived on the edge of society, both literally as her house was built into the city wall and figuratively as a woman of ill repute. Yet in that moment, she stood at a crossroads that would define her destiny. She could alert the king's guards and gain favor, perhaps even status. But her heart had been stirred by the stories she'd heard, of the Red Sea parting, of mighty kings falling before the Israelites' God. Somehow she knew he was not just a god, he was the God, and he was with these men. In a flash of conviction, Rahab chose faith over fear. She hurried the spies up to her flat rooftop, covering them beneath bundles of drying flax. When the king's soldiers arrived demanding their whereabouts, Rahab met them with calm deception. "Yes, they came to me," she said, "but they've already left." It was a lie, but one rooted in loyalty to a higher truth. Her actions were not born of treachery, but of trust, in a God she had never seen, yet somehow knew. In a city bound for destruction, Rahab's home became a sanctuary of faith, courage, and divine alignment. As the footsteps of the Jericho soldiers faded into the distance, a deep silence settled over Rahab's rooftop. The danger had passed, but her heart beat wildly, not from fear, but from the weight of something greater: faith. With trembling hands and tearful eyes, Rahab turned to the Israelite spies she had just saved. What she said next would change her life forever. "I know," she began, voice quivering, "that the Lord has given you this land." It was not a question, it was a conviction. She recounted how the people of Jericho had heard of the parting of the Red Sea and the crushing defeat of Kings Sihon and Og. These stories had struck terror into every heart behind Jericho's mighty walls. Yet while others cowered in dread, Rahab responded with belief. "The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below," she declared, an extraordinary confession from a Canaanite woman. Then came her plea, bold and humble all at once. "Please," she begged, "show kindness to my family. Spare my father, mother, brothers, and sisters. Remember me when your people come." Her words reached into the hearts of the spies, and right then, a covenant was formed. In exchange for her protection, they offered her assurance. "Tie this scarlet cord in your window," they instructed. It would mark her home for deliverance when Jericho fell. That scarlet thread, simple yet powerful, echoed the blood of the Passover lamb that had once protected Israelite homes in Egypt. Now it would serve as a symbol of salvation for a believing outsider, grafted into God's mercy. Through one act of faith, Rahab not only saved her family, but stepped into a divine promise that would forever alter her destiny and the history of Israel. When Rahab tied the scarlet cord in her window, it was far more than a signal to the Israelite soldiers. It was a declaration of faith, a bold act of spiritual trust. She didn't wait for the Israelites to return or for the walls of Jericho to begin trembling. The moment the spies left her home, she secured the cord in place, staking everything on the word of strangers she had just met, and more importantly, on the God they served. This crimson thread wasn't chosen by accident. Its color and purpose echoed a powerful image from Israel's past, the blood of the Passover lamb smeared on the doorposts in Egypt. In Exodus 12:13, God declared, "When I see the blood, I will pass over you." That blood was a sign of deliverance and protection, just as Rahab's scarlet cord became a symbol of her household salvation. In both cases, it wasn't the strength of the sign itself that saved. It was the promise of the God who honored it. Rahab had no visible proof that her city would fall or that the Israelites would remember her. The walls of Jericho still loomed high, her neighbors still lived in defiance of God, and the destruction hadn't begun. But Rahab chose to believe. She didn't just hang the cord, she held on to its meaning. That piece of scarlet fabric fluttering in her window was her silent sermon of hope, courage, and redemption. By faith, Rahab the prostitute became Rahab the believer. And through that faith, God wrote her into the lineage of kings and of Christ himself. The scarlet cord wasn't just a lifeline, it was the beginning of a whole new legacy. The Israelites, under Joshua's command, had arrived at the gates of Jericho, a city fortified with towering walls and fierce warriors. Yet God's battle plan wasn't one of swords or siege engines. It was a test of obedience and faith. For 6 days, the Israelite army marched around the city once each day. They made no sound, no taunts, no war cries, not even the clanging of weapons. Only the quiet rhythm of footsteps and the soft blowing of priest trumpets echoed through the valley. Jericho watched from behind its walls, confused and unnerved. This wasn't war as they knew it. It was something divine. Then came the 7th day. At dawn, the Israelites rose and circled the city not once, but 7 times. After the final lap, a mighty blast of trumpets rang out, and the people shouted with one voice. Suddenly the ground quaked, and the walls that had stood for centuries crumbled in an instant, reduced to rubble by the power of God, not man. But amidst the destruction, one section of the wall remained standing. In that section, a scarlet cord fluttered from a window, the home of Rahab, the prostitute who had hidden the Israelite spies. Her simple act of faith had not been forgotten. Just as they had promised, the spies returned, not with swords, but with salvation. "Rahab," they called out, "we've come for you." And so Rahab, her parents, her brothers and sisters, and all who belonged to her were led safely out of the wreckage. The city had fallen, but Rahab rose, not only to safety, but to a new life among God's people. Her scarlet cord was more than a sign. It was a symbol of deliverance through faith. Though Rahab had been instrumental in Israel's victory at Jericho, her story didn't end with her rescue. After the city's fall, Rahab and her family were spared, just as the spies had promised. Yet even after salvation, their place among God's people wasn't immediate or easy. They were made to live outside the Israelite camp, physically alive, yes, but still socially and spiritually distant. To many, Rahab remained a Canaanite, a foreigner, and most of all, a harlot. Old labels cling tightly, even when God has already begun to write a new story. But God's eyes saw what others could not. Where others saw a tainted past, he saw unwavering faith. Where others saw shame, he saw purpose. Rahab had risked everything to side with the God of Israel, a decision born not of desperation, but of revelation. Her declaration to the spies, "The Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath," echoed louder than her past. That faith did not go unnoticed in heaven or on earth. Gradually, the community began to see Rahab through new eyes. The whispers grew quieter. She was no longer just Rahab the prostitute. She became Rahab the believer, Rahab the courageous, Rahab the redeemed. Then something truly miraculous happened. A man named Salmon, a prince from the royal tribe of Judah, looked at Rahab and didn't see her past. He saw her strength. He didn't flinch at her history. He was drawn to her faith. Against all social conventions, he chose her to be his bride. And Rahab, the former outcast, became part of the royal bloodline. A woman once marked by disgrace was now embraced as family, woven into the very lineage that would one day bring forth King David, and eventually, Jesus the Messiah. Rahab's story did not end with the fall of Jericho. It was only the beginning. After her courageous act of faith in hiding the Israelite spies, Rahab was not only spared from destruction, but welcomed into the community of God's people. She married Salmon, a prince of the tribe of Judah, and together they had a son named Boaz, the same Boaz who would later marry Ruth, the Moabite woman known for her loyalty and virtue. This union brought forth a lineage of extraordinary significance. Rahab, a former prostitute from a pagan city, became a foundational matriarch in the bloodline of Israel's greatest king, David, and ultimately the Messiah himself, Jesus Christ. Matthew 1:5-6 openly honors her. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. Her name is not hidden or edited out. It's proclaimed boldly, showing that God delights in redeeming what the world throws away. Despite her past, Rahab is the only woman in Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith, identified by her former life of prostitution. And yet she is celebrated for her faith, not condemned for her failures. Rahab's life is a testimony to the transforming power of God's grace. From the brothels of Jericho to the royal lineage of Christ, her journey reveals that God does not consult our past to determine our future. Her faith didn't just save her life, it redirected history. Through her came kings, through her came mercy, and through her came the Savior of the world. Rahab's legacy is a living message. God can use anyone, from any background, to fulfill his divine purposes. Rahab's story stands as a powerful testimony to the redeeming nature of God, a reminder that no one is too far gone, too broken, or too stained by their past for God to use. She was not born into a noble lineage. She wasn't a prophet, a queen, or a battle-hardened warrior. Rahab was a prostitute living in the pagan city of Jericho, a woman with a past that many would deem unworthy. And yet, when faced with the knowledge of the one true God, she chose to believe. She hid the Israelite spies, risking her life because she trusted that God could do something greater with her story. That single act of faith changed everything. God did not define her by what she had done. He defined her by what she believed. This is the same God who is at work today. Maybe you've made mistakes. Maybe you've been labeled, judged, or cast aside. But Rahab's life proclaims this truth. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Your faith redefines you. When you place your trust in God, He doesn't just forgive, He restores, rewrites, and redeems. 1 Corinthians 1:27 reminds us that God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, the weak to shame the strong. God delights in taking what the world deems broken or useless and transforming it into something beautiful and mighty. Rahab's faith led her from the margins of Jericho to the very lineage of Jesus Christ, Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. If God could use her with all her baggage, all her shame, then surely He can use you. So don't give up. Your story isn't over. With God, redemption is always possible, and the next chapter can be the most powerful one yet. If this story moved your heart, don't let it stop with you. Share Rahab's story with someone who needs to be reminded that their past does not disqualify them. Send it to a friend. Post it on social media. Let the world know there is no limit to what God can do with a willing heart. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Divine Verses Unmasked and turn on notifications. More powerful stories of redemption are coming your way. God doesn't choose people the way the world does. He looks at the heart, and faith, no matter how small, can change history.